Hey everyone, and welcome back to the video. So today we're bringing back one of my favorite series, Game versus Game. It's where two games go to head, we rank them through a bunch of categories, and one game reigns supreme as the objective better product. So without any further ado, let's get into this episode. So in this episode we have GTA 5, which is by far the best-selling Grand Theft Auto game there ever is, and Saints Row 2, which is often regarded as one of the best open world crime games to ever exist. So we're going to be comparing commercial success to critical success. How do they rank up? How do they stack up? And which one is the better product for your hard-earned cash? So let's get into the video. So first off, we're going to talk about the map. One of the main topics I always talk about in these videos is how the map is and how it's designed, and is it pretty, is it good to drive around, etc, etc. So let's start off with Los Santos. Los Santos is an absolute gem. Graphically it's stunning even to this day, and I think it's a pretty good map. The NPCs are interesting, there's tons of vibrance, and I think it's a very well crafted and enjoyable map. So I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. It could do with a few more things around the map to actually do, but aside from that, it's a really good map. So next up we have Stillwater. Now Stillwater is a fantastic map full of tons of varied districts, tons of really unique NPCs, tons of interiors and monuments, tons of history, tons of Easter eggs. Quite frankly, no biases. I think it's one of the most perfect open world crime game maps. In fact, just open world maps I've ever played in my life. Now, I know that's going to sound biased being a Saints Row channel, but I'm just being honest. It is a fantastic map, and it should be what every open world crime game aspires to be like. So I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. Honestly, it's a fantastic map, and every single game should aspire to have a map this good. So next up, let's talk about the actual gameplay. How is it when it comes to combat, driving, etc, etc. So quite frankly, Rockstar smashes it out the park with GTA 5. Its combat is really fun, really fluid, really unique, not something you can get pretty much anywhere else. I think it's done really well, especially for the time. Saints Row 2 does it also well, but I don't think really to the same degree. So then we have the driving in GTA 5. Now, GTA 5's driving is honestly my favorite in gaming, being real. I think it's done really well, feels really fluid, and honestly, it's just really satisfying to drive really fast cars and really slow cars in this game. I feel like I always have control, and I know when I should be braking, accelerating, etc, etc. I just think you have a ton of control, and it's really good. So honestly, when it comes to how the gameplay is, when it comes to, like, how fluid stuff is, it's smashing it at the park with GTA 5. On top of that, I don't think the game is very boring when it comes to stuff. I mean, obviously I'd like for a few more things to be in the open world, but we'll come to side activities kind of a little later. But when it comes to actually the combat and, the walking, I think it's a really polished and well-rounded experience. And honestly, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I think it is a really good game when it comes to this, and honestly, I think it smashes its sort of gameplay elements out of the park. Now, Saints Row 2, it's an older game, so I'm going to give it a bit of leeway, okay? I'm not expecting it to have the exact same refinement as Grand Theft Auto 5, which is not only on a way bigger budget, but also it's just a more modern game. But I do have to say, there are elements where it can feel just a little bit janky. I think it's a little rough around the edges, and it's not a perfectly flawless experience. However, I do think it makes up for it in gameplay elements. There are tons of diversions you can do, tons of weird and wacky activities you can do on the side, not even actual official activities, just cool things you can do in your spare time. The map's got tons of cool elements to it. You can go and gamble and stuff, and honestly, it's just a really cool and varied gameplay experience. So I'm also going to give it a 9 out of 10, and I think that if the controls and driving was a bit more fluid, kind of like GTA 5 was, I'd give it a 10. Next up, we have the story. So again, we'll start with GTA 5. GTA 5 story is half decent. I like all the characters. I like what they have going for them. The mission structure is really good. Honestly, I don't get bored for it. It's a very funny story as well. Honestly, I'd say it's well worth a play, and I don't really have a great deal to say. I don't think it's very mid. I don't think it's, the best thing I've ever played. I would just say it's a good, solid story for a good, solid GTA game. So I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Now, Saints Row 2's story, on the other hand, is an absolute masterpiece. It's one of the best stories I've played in an open world crime game, and I think it's only rivaled by games like Sleeping Dogs. It is a phenomenal tale of just a really good gang experience. And honestly, whilst it may not be perfect in every element, and while I don't think everything was at its max potential, I think this is pretty much as close to perfection as you can come when a game is like this. I think it's done really well, and I think it tells its story really well. There are emotional moments, there are funny moments, there are characters that stick with you, there are lines that stick with you, and it is the most memeable game in the world. Wholeheartedly, I think this is a near perfect story, but I do think there's elements that are slightly weaker. For example, I think the Sons of Samdi it was kind of underwritten. I think that the general should have maybe had a bit more information about him and a couple more missions where we actually go against him, because I felt like he was a bit of an underwritten boss. So I will knock like half a point off for that, but I'm going to give it a 9.5. I think it does a fantastic job, and besides a few personal gripes, it's done really well. Customization, one of the classic forefronts of Saints Row, and it's known for it. But first, how does GTA 5 do it? Honestly, for its story mode, I don't think it does too bad, but its online mode is really good. You know, credit where it's due, its online mode has a ton of options, and whilst I think it is an absolute clusterfuck to try and navigate that shit, if you're trying to find something specific, you're going to be searching for ages in many different menus. I think regardless of that, it does have a lot of options. But quite frankly, it does not compare to Saints Row 2. So with GTA 5, I think that it's done really well and it has tons of options, but there's not tons of certain like toggles for each option. You know, you can't take the tie off, you can't put the tie on, for example, in certain things. And, you know, whilst there are wear styles, there's just not quite that same amount of customization as other games. So for GTA 5, I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. I think that's a fair score. It's a very decent customization, but I also don't think it's anything too groundbreaking. And again, it's just really solid. Now, going back over to Saints Row 2 for a second, you can customize literally everything. You can customize the texture, you can customize the colors into 3 different colors, maybe even more at times. You can add different logos onto stuff. It is, quite frankly, the definition of everything is customizable. It is the peak of customization in the series. So, I don't see any other way than I can give it another 10. I know I feel like I'm sucking up to Saints Row 2 here, but it's really good. It's what every game should aspire to be when it comes to customization. And whilst maybe it doesn't have as many options when it comes to just pure numbers as GTA 5, each option is so much more fleshed out with different wear styles and different options and toggles that it probably amasses to more different wear styles in general than GTA 5 does. So let's talk about characters. I think the characters are done really well in GTA 5. So, you know, you have tons of really cool characters. Obviously, there's the 3 main protagonists, Michael, Trevor, Franklin, but then you have so many other characters that you meet, like Jimmy, for example, and Tanya, and, you know, there's plenty of others that are quite memorable. I don't think this game, by any means, has the best characters in gaming, but again, I think it does a very solid job. Tons of really one-off characters that I love to see in GTA 5. For example, I forgot his name, but the guy who does the Fame or Shame guy, I forgot his name. From a Shame dude, he's really funny, and he's only there for like a mission or two, but I find him absolutely hilarious. So, you know, characters like that are one-off, they're really well done, and honestly, I've got no knocks towards the characters. Most of them are done exceptionally well. So, I'm going to give it an 8.5. I think it's done really well. Now, Saints Row 2, however, I think it does it just a tad bit better. I don't think the characters are the best thing in the world in Saints Row 2, and I only say this because I think some characters, again, are slightly underwrote, like the General, like Carlos to a certain degree. I kind of wish some characters had a bit more writing or a bit more fleshed out with a couple extra missions, but aside from that, no real complaints. All the characters are super memorable. Johnny Gat is iconic in this game. Pierce is iconic in this game. Shaundi iconic in this game. You meet the iconic Saints, and it's what they're known for. So I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I think that's a fair score considering there's a few small writing flaws here and there, but overall the characters are really solid and really good. So I think it's only fair that we also play a little bit more into GTA 5's wheelhouse for this question and go, how is the online experience? So the online experience in GTA Online, say what you want about how much it's been milked to death, say how much you want about how much it's not good for GTA as a franchise as a whole. For a standalone game as GTA 5, we would all kill in the Saints Row community to get a game with this level of support. Love it or hate it, you have to respect it. GTA 5 has been pumped full of content that, quite frankly, and I can't believe I'm saying this, it's probably the definitive online open world crime game we've pretty much ever had. I think it is the most definitive open world crime game experience, especially for the online aspect. And quite frankly, the online, it's just really good. There's tons of modes, tons of communities, and it is thriving to this day over a decade later. You just have to respect it. You have to respect it. I quite frankly feel like giving it a 10 because I can't really think about how they could improve upon what they have. They have made, quite frankly, a gem of an online, and whilst I definitely don't like how some things are monetized and how much shark cards are kind of shoved down your throat, once you get past the anti-consumer practices that we see in pretty much every game these days, it's a flawless experience. It is a really fun mode with friends, and I can't really think of what else they could really add to it to make it better. For a GTA game, it is really good. GTA always goes more grounded and real. I don't see any way you could knock it. So let's go over to Saints Row 2 real quick. So Saints Row 2's online, quite frankly, it's a bit disappointing. As someone who's played a decent amount of Saints Row 1 multiplayer now, I definitely didn't play it in its prime, but I've gone back and enjoyed it. I can see that it was a way better experience, and even if I'd played it even earlier, I'd have had an even better experience, I'm sure. But Saints Row 2, it just kind of misses that. It does the bare minimum for an online mode, and I think it's a half decent online mode. I don't think it's by any means bad. I just don't think it's very good. So I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. It's just not quite as good as Saints Row 1 did it, and I think Saints Row 1 did it really well. So a 6 out of 10 seems pretty fair for this, in my opinion. And finally, let's talk about bugs, exploits, glitches, and just general jankiness for the sake of it. So GTA 5, it's honestly a very well polished game. I have to give it credit, and I think it's a decently well done game by Rockstar, and I think Rockstar always does it. And yeah, it does have a few glitches and a few very weird things that people have exploited over the years, like random things in the sky, weird launch glitches, some weird flying bike stuff that you can do with like bicycles. It's all around a very polished experience. You have to credit it. It's very well optimized, and I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. Yeah, there's a few bugs I'd like fixed, but realistically, it's done very well. Now, Saints Row 2 is very weird in this department because on Xbox, I've had a near flawless experience. I don't have tons of glitches. It's just a really fun game to play. I don't have any frame dips really. It's completely fine. But then the PC port that's supposedly getting a fix at some point, it's unbelievably broken and one of the worst PC ports I've ever played. So, for this department, to keep it kind of fair considering it was a bad port not done by the official developers of Saints Row 2, I think that I should be fair and kind of write off the PC port, considering it's not done by them, and maybe just knock a single point off for it. You know what I mean? It sucks, but it wasn't done by them who made the actual game, and I don't want to hinder it too much because if I was ranking that port, it'd be like a 2 out of 10. But as for the Xbox version, it's a fairly solid experience. It has probably a couple more bugs and glitches than GTA 5 does, but I wouldn't say it's night and day difference. And whilst, yeah, there are definitely some weird ones, that probably just comes with it being a slightly older game. Outside of just the fact that it's an older game jank, it's kind of a flawless experience on Xbox, and I honestly don't have too many issues. So I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I think it's a very solid experience, and I think once you write off the PC port, and honestly, I don't know how to talk about the PS3 port, but if you write off the PC port, the Xbox version's pretty okay. It's a nice way to play it, everything kind of works as intended, and whilst there is definitely a couple bugs, it's not too bad. So I think that's going to do it for this video. We're going to tally up the scores and see who wins. So before I go, I want to just know your opinion. What do you guys think of Saints Row as a whole versus GTA? Do you think GTA 5 is the better game, or do you think Saints Row 2 is the better game? Which one defined the generation more? Which one had more of an impact? And let me know your thoughts. It's okay to think I'm completely way off in my rankings and system. That is fine. That is a really interesting debate to have, and I would love to hear people who entirely disagree with everything I say explain to me why they disagree. It's nice to have that healthy communication, and I always enjoy having that conversation. But without wasting any more time, let's see the scores. So in first place, we have Saints Row 2 with a score of 61.5 out of 70. I expected this. Volition really did create a masterpiece that does not fall flat in many areas, if any areas. But not far behind is GTA 5 with a score of 59 out of 70. GTA 5 does a lot of things really well and really refined, but I think if it experimented a little bit more on the wackier side and had a few more features and generally just a bit better quality of life, I think people would really enjoy that game a lot more. But I think it just kind of comes down as a little bit too tame to really snag that top spot. I think if it just kind of adventured a bit more outside of the norm and was just a bit more fun, people would enjoy it a bit more, and perhaps we could have that conversation. But realistically, a lot of GTA 5 score comes down to how good the online mode is. If you minus that online mode, it is a lot more points behind Saints Row 2 than you would expect. Anyway though, let me know your thoughts down below. Am I way off or am I on point? Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video, guys. Take care.